Sober on Purpose is the podcast that takes you beyond clean to fulfilling your dreams. Other programs get you sober. We ask what's next. Come thrive with us.
Welcome, Sober on Purpose friends. We have another action-packed episode for your purpose. So, hey, Jerry.
Hey, Tanya.
Where have you been?
I was in the living room a little while ago doing emails and stuff. What about you?
It's nice to have you home again.
Thanks.
We have a wonderful guest with us today, Erin File, and this is a little confusing in a way. I found her on the internet, and her story was so compelling that I reached out to talk to her. And I don't normally share my deepest, darkest personal secrets, but in talking with Erin, you kind of want to unburden everything. And she is the founder and leader of Mind Fix Group that has a 93% success rate with helping people overcome whatever is stopping them from living their fullest life. And we're talking 9-figure entrepreneurs, all the way down to stay-at-home moms. She has a whole team behind her. And what really attracted me was I had done some serious EMDR work, which is rapid eye movement work to deal with trauma. And I was almost finished, but some things happened with our therapist and I didn't get to finish with her and was going to have to work through a new therapist. And it about made me cry. And then it did make me cry, let's be honest. I read Erin's story about her own struggle after running a very successful web design company for 15 years, extremely successful, having a successful life, then debilitating pain, debilitating depression. And well, I'll let you tell it, Erin, how you came to decide that traditional therapy was no longer an option for you.
It had been many decades of it. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was a teenager. I had actually started being told I needed to go to therapy when I was a young kid. I was coming home from school very sad, and by the time I was in high school, I was put on antidepressants. I was continuing therapy from high school into college, into graduate school, into my 20s. And I kept going to therapy because that's what you do, or that's what you used to do when things weren't working, is you'd go and you'd sit and talk to someone. And yet after decades of therapy, as I found myself in my mid and then into my late 30s, I just never found anything was working or helping me feel better. There was, you would think after doing something that's supposed to be helping for many, many, many years, that you'd at least feel a little bit better. But as I got older, like nothing seemed to really be helping. In fact, I felt worse than I ever had. And yet there was nothing else to do. What do you do if you're a responsible person? You go to more therapy. And yet it was just this cycle and nothing ever changed. And as I had ended up with chronic pain and then more anxiety because I had the pain, and then depression because nobody could seem to help me with the pain or the anxiety. And I kept going to more therapy. I was like, this just isn't working anymore. And I'm not going to keep doing the same thing.
So then you ran off and you studied with some really powerful people, some different methods. Can you give us kind of a background of what your choices were?
I started off trying to learn more about people. I went and learned about personality profiling and DISC assessment and Kolbe assessments. And yet that is intriguing, but when I wanted to really do the work on myself and go, how can I change what's going on here? Not just like what I intellectually understand. I started to study the world. I began my path studying the world of beliefs. So I looked into the work of Morty Lefko and Lion Goodman and studied how they were pioneers in the world of shifting beliefs. I started to look into the world of subconscious work. So liminal coaching and liminal work and conversational hypnosis, and how people could have really powerful conversations that looked like normal conversations from the outside, but were not. I started to be intrigued by that. Those were the starting points. That's what really kicked me off in the direction of being able to shift not just my thoughts and my behaviors, but at the root level, the seeds, the beliefs that were creating the thoughts, that were creating the emotions, that were creating the actions, and all the symptoms I was experiencing that I couldn't seem to change through normal coaching or therapy.
So it's the seeds, and that's kind of what I experienced with EMDR. Is there were some seeds down there that were a lot deeper, that had been affecting my life for effectively 50 years, that I didn't realize were there, but I was acting out of those experiences and I didn't realize it. And that worked, but my goodness, I was 2.5 years in and not finished. And I had on and off for the last all of my adult life, on and off, had therapy. And like your experience, hadn't quite gotten there. And when I ran across you, you said, no, change can be fast. Change can be lasting, because that was my other fear, was maybe I'm incurable. So for anybody out there who thinks they're incurable or that they can't live full and productive lives, that's not true. I just want to say that out loud. And I know we've got some community members that both deal with addiction and mental health and all of those things. There is help out there. Erin might not be the answer for everybody, but there is help out there. So limiting beliefs, that's pretty much where we started when I started with you. Can you share with us a little bit more about how you deal with limiting beliefs?
Yeah. So if we take, I'll put a bookmark there. If we take a step back, our approach, and the reason why we find we're able to experience such powerful results, is because our approach looks at everything through a subtractive lens. So a lot of people in the world of mental health and addiction feel so frustrated and they feel so broken, because so much of what they do when they go to coaching and when they get sessions and they do treatments, not everything, but so much of it is additive. It's here's another technique, here's another strategy, here's another tool to help you cope with and manage these symptoms that you're experiencing. And in a way, it's almost like someone showing up with a runny nose and the doctor's like, here's nasal decongestant. And here's another something to try and manage your symptoms, when at the end of the day, if you just stop drinking milk because you have a dairy allergy, you don't have to manage the symptom, right? Like you subtract what's actually causing the problem instead of adding more Band-Aids or nasal decongestant to the issue. And so what we have found is these different combinations of subtracting what's actually causing what people are experiencing as symptoms. So we typically think of people experiencing problems or challenges that fall into 3 buckets. They're either problems related to thoughts, kind of like, a harsh inner critic, or thoughts that you're just beating yourself up and I'm no good and I'm never going to be able to be successful, or I'm never going to be able to quit. So that's bucket 1, right? Challenges related to thoughts. And then some people will also have or have challenges related to emotions or feelings. So some people deal with anger, some people deal with severe anxiety and panic. For much of my life, it was depression and sadness. And then we have people who deal with patterns of behavior, kind of the 3rd bucket, behavior, actions, habits. So this is avoidance, I never do the things I'm supposed to do, or I always do the things I'm not supposed to do, or I engage in yelling whenever someone challenges me. So behavior. So we have thoughts, emotions, and then behaviors. And typically what we find is people spend a lot of time frustrated with these things, and they try to change these things. They try to change how they think. They try to change how they feel. They try to change how they act. I'm going to create a new habit for 30 days, right? Or I'm going to, every time I have a thought, I'm going to tell myself, stop. And I'll just try to not have that thought. And it's so frustrating. It's no wonder so many people feel broken or frustrated or upset with themselves because they're trying to change thoughts, emotions, and feelings when at the end of the day, those things are symptoms. Those things are all occurring and happening for some reason.
Mhm.
And so if you're trying to change things up here after the fact, it's like trying to change the runny nose and fix the runny nose when you have the dairy allergy. What we find is so often the root cause for problematic patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior are often determined by, there's a whole host of things, memories and traumas and senses, but so much can be boiled down to our beliefs and what we believe to be true.
Mhm.
So the funny example I often give, like when I'm giving a talk, is if you have a belief that cats are dangerous, you're going to have the thoughts, I'm in danger every time you see a cat, and you're going to have feelings of anxiety every time you see a cat, and you're going to run away every time you see a cat. And you could try to fix those, but at the end of the day, if you still have the belief that cats are dangerous, it's going to be really hard to keep change and to have change last. But if you go and you delete that belief or get rid of that belief, your thoughts and your feelings and your actions will all change instantly and automatically. And you don't have to keep repeating and trying to change, address the symptoms. So I just wanted to take a step back and say, like, beliefs are the seeds that sprout the problematic thoughts and sprout the problematic emotions and create the actions. And instead of trying to change the things that are happening after the fact, if you go to the beginning of the chain and pull that seed out, you don't have to manage or cope with those thoughts and feelings and actions for the most part.
Don't look at me.
Well, so it took a while for us to get there. I knew it was there, but I had this belief that my father didn't like outspoken, I don't want to say capable, but more dominant style women, because of what I had seen. It never got said to me, but because of what I had seen. And in working with your team, I was able to bring that to the surface, look at where that really came from, and then have a very peaceful conversation with my father, who said, no, I never applied that to you and your sister. That's my problem, not yours. I mean, that's 50 years later.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. So that was extremely freeing in the sense that I was holding on to something that was somebody else's, for one, and for two, that I had internalized even without it being spoken to me, and didn't know why I was playing small, why I wasn't willing to share my gifts and talents, why I wasn't willing to get out there. And truly, Sober on Purpose community, you really have Erin to thank and her team for this even coming back online. I was not willing to be visible until we worked on some of these things. So it's been a huge change. And one of the things I really appreciated was one of the first beliefs you work on, whether we actually state it or not, is this won't work for me.
Mm.
And I really appreciated that, because I think our experience has been that addicts make really great entrepreneurs because they get focused and they get driven and they get all these things, but they may not be happy. They may be accomplishing, but they may not be happy. And they've just flipped that addiction over into, I'm producing money, I'm producing this company or multiple companies or those types of things. What's been your experience in working with entrepreneurs or addicts? I mean, either way.
We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and we've worked with a handful of addicts. What we find is, at the end of the day, what it all comes down to is, and we had to learn this the hard way, someone has to truly want to change. It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete, or if you are running your first business, or you've been running a wildly successful company for 40 years, or you're an addict for 3 years. Like, what we have found is that you have to want to change. So for example, just like last month, we had an entrepreneur who completed the program, and then his daughter completed the program, and they were over the moon, and they were like, mom, you know, like the husband said to the wife and the daughter said to mom, like, you have to do this, you have to. And they kind of talked her into it.
Right.
Her heart wasn't there. Like, she was doing it because she felt she was supposed to, and she felt this pressure. And, you know, without that internal desire and that internal drive and that excitement to want to level up and to leave behind her fears and to experience more happiness and fulfillment, she didn't really show up for the sessions. She wasn't really present. And she kind of realized halfway through, like, I don't really want to do this. This isn't for me. And it's fine. But we've found that at the end of the day, you know, we've had even people want their kids to join. When you're ready to change and you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I'm sick of being in this pattern. I want to be free. That's really the fire that's needed. And
when the student is ready, the master appears.
Yes, exactly. There's nothing more powerful than that.
And that's where I was. I'm like, I did a lot of healing. I'm in a reasonably good place. On the other hand, things were still not falling into place. And I thought, I'm not going to spend another 20, 30 years like this. And I'm not going to spend another year on the couch with a therapist and all the effort that takes, and go through the traditional model. Because I've probably been through almost all the models there are. And I'm not saying that some of them were not effective. Some of them were effective. If you're in therapy now, please don't stop. Make good choices. Figure out what's best for you. You know, I'm not saying to walk away from therapy. I've gotten a lot of good out of it. It's not that, you know, if we need a couples therapy, if we need to do something else, it's not that I wouldn't do it again. But for me, I was at the flat on the backstage going, why can't I get over this hump? I know there's another side. Why can't I get over that hump? And you were kind enough to have me call another entrepreneur, and in talking to him, I went, oh, light bulb. This is really what I want. And I'm going to say the same thing. It's not, there is a method. Once you've done the clarity calls, the belief sessions, the more somatic sessions, there is a method, and you can see underneath the message. This is not, as you said, it's a conversation within a conversation. What I like is there's a lot of silence and a lot of reflection. And as one of your teammates would say, Daniel would say, when you are sleeping, when you are resting, when you are doing all of these calming things, your brain is still working this out. Those are all things that you need to do. And as I learn more and more about deep work and creativity and all of that, that's exactly what you have to do.
Okay, I have to jump in here because you guys obviously have talked a lot, know each other, and I feel much more like the audience here. So
ask a good question.
I'm working on it. So what is it exactly targeted, this Mind Fix method? What is it exactly targeted to do?
So it is the whole purpose of why we exist is to help high achievers, leaders, entrepreneurs, people who want to change, who are desiring to achieve some type of outcome, more happiness, more fulfillment, less stress, and yet they feel like there's something blocking them. And another book, another coach, another therapy session is not getting there. They feel like there's some barrier, some friction, some resistance, and they feel stuck, or they feel like they're in their own way and they're not sure what's going on. So people come to us, and MindFix exists so that we can identify why they're stuck, what's actually going on, and then not just leave it at the insight level, but then actually eliminate the cause of why someone is stuck. So someone may go, you know what, I've been dealing with this anxiety. It's making my productivity absolutely horrible. And it's showing up every time I need to be like presenting or up on stage or on a podcast or giving presentations at work. I start getting anxious and nervous and I freeze. Can't have that anymore. Cool. Okay. So someone says, I want to get rid of that. So when they come to us, what we'll do is we have sessions and we'll be able to uncover the unique reason why that person is experiencing that type of anxiety. And it may be a combination of old traumas or memories. It may be beliefs that were formed when they were young. It may be stuck emotions that haven't been released. We'll find what's going on. We'll find the reasons why someone is experiencing that. And then we delete and we clear them. And then the anxiety will clear. So instead of here's how to manage your anxiety and learn breathing techniques and then count to 10. No. By the time someone finishes working with us, that anxiety should either be gone or at such a low level that it's very easily not noticeable.
That makes perfect sense. And if I heard you right earlier, you were mentioning, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was that in traditional therapy and coaching, it primarily focuses on the addition of actions. And in this method, it focuses on the removal of thoughts or actions. Is that accurate?
The therapies that I went to, kind of the classical traditional talk therapies, CBT and things like that, I found from my personal experience tended to be additive. I would leave with worksheets. I would leave with like, here's all the cognitive distortions. Notice and make a mark every time you're making a mountain out of a molehill or you're using black and white thinking. Use your conscious mind to track when you're exaggerating, things like that, or you're thinking dark. And I'd have checklists and worksheets and I was supposed to journal. I remember I was trying to keep a gratitude journal one day, 20 different things I'm grateful for and trying to change how I was thinking with more thinking. And I was given breathing techniques, counting techniques, all these things to try and manage the stuff that I was dealing with. And it just felt like I was piling on more and more work to try and calm the things as they were getting worse. So I do not ever want to suggest that all therapy and all coaching is like that. And we're the only thing out there that is subtractive. But my experience over the years when I went to therapy and tried different methods and coaching was, let's say this, it got to a point, there was a day when I was running my web agency, when I remember waking up and on my to-do list, before I got to the work of my day, like my business, I think I counted 16 things, responsibilities that I had to do during the day just to be able to manage, the anxiety and the stress and the depression. And, I had to keep the stream of consciousness journal. And then I had to do 2 half-hour meditations. And then I had to do my mobility exercises. And then I had to do the gratitude journaling. And then I was supposed to do a certain type of breathing. And I had to do awareness exercises. And it was just like the amount of things that I had been given by all my coaches.
Anxiety over the to-do list.
Yeah. Anxiety over just not checking the list or drinking enough water or this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The water.
Yeah.
I had to drink enough water. And then I had to cook my own meals because that was a meditation and I had to eat a certain way. And then I had to make sure that in addition to the working out, I had to walk because that synchronized the left and right side of the brains. It was so many hacks on hacks on hacks.
Right.
It didn't feel better because at the end of the day, I still had the beliefs that I wasn't good enough and that I wasn't capable. And I still hadn't cleared the traumas of some of the past things that had happened to me. And no one had ever taught me to manage the emotions that I was pushing down. Like none of the things that were creating all of that were addressed. And so yes, my experience and many others are that so many personal development tools and treatments and modalities out there are additive. And we find the rapid transformation is possible, kind of like when you pull out the reason why it's created. So, we often think about problems like weeds. And if you keep cutting off the top, the weeds keep growing back, right? And you're like, I'm getting rid of it. But it's like, but if you just go down, you pull out the seed and you poison the seeds at the bottom, it just goes away and you don't have to keep managing the weed anymore.
You'd make a really great recovering addict because one of the things that you'll see the best addicts who are in recovery and work in their program do is they'll always try and talk in my experience and you're really great at that. It's a great technique you've incorporated.
It's
explaining.
thank you. I think it's so important because everybody's experience is so different, and the only thing I can ever know for certain is my experience. For
Right.
me to say talk in absolutes, and I used to when I was younger. This is how it is, and this is how it is, and it's like, wait a second, not for this person and not for those people, and so it's really, I find irresponsible or dangerous to speak in anything other than being able to share what's worked for me.
I couldn't agree more strongly. Well, let's say there's somebody in the audience right now who is truly debilitated with anxiety or fear over a cat or something like that. Is there any techniques that, you know, and they can't quite get to you just yet, and maybe you've got a wait list for the next
Yeah.
program? Is there any, I don't know, simple, beautiful, elegant band-aids that you could offer them with all your experience? And
Yeah, there's a
and
couple
recovery?
things. Yeah, there's a couple things that people can do to make a shift right away. So the first thing that is absolutely debilitating, with the rise of all the personality assessments and personality types and tests that you can take out there, and the labels of like type A and addict, what we see is oftentimes people never even make it to a program like ours because they are absolutely mired in the conviction that their challenge, they are their challenge. They are just a type A person. And so they're going to be stressed their whole life. That's how it is. Or because they're a D on the DISC profile, they're going to be aggressive and they're going to have anger explosions and they're going to snap. And that's how they are because the profile says they are. And that's who they are. And then it gets really dangerous when you take the assessments that are like, this is how you're wired and you can't change it, right? And so the first thing that I invite people to do is to look at the areas of their life that they wish were different. And you can start mapping out things and writing them out in terms of patterns. So we are whole people and we are experiencing patterns of thought, patterns of emotion and feeling, and patterns of action or inaction. And some of the patterns, most of the patterns that we don't like, are counterproductive. They're holding us back, they're not serving us, they're harming us, or they're keeping us from being the people we want to be or achieving our goals. So if every time I make a mistake or I have a typo, I'm thinking, God, I'm so stupid, and I'm beating myself up, that I could say I have a pattern of when I make mistakes, I feel embarrassment and shame, and then I beat myself up in my head. Suddenly, instead of I'm a critical person, I have a pattern. There's a trigger and either a thought or an emotion or a behavior or some combination. And I write it down. I go, okay, that's a pattern. That's out here. I am experiencing this pattern. Patterns can be cleared. That's what we do with our clients. And that's what people who specialize in rapid transformation can help with, is clearing patterns. Or it may be when I have to think about my finances, I start to get on social media and I procrastinate really badly. So again, trigger. When I sit down to work on my finances, then this happens. So suddenly, again, I'm a whole person and I've got a pattern. It's not who I am. I don't have to get angry at myself. I'm experiencing a pattern. And there are people and businesses out there that can help you clear and shift and collapse patterns. So the first thing people can do is start to get really clear on what they're not excited about in their life. What's the trigger, and then what's going on. And you can map these things out, and suddenly you can be looking at a page going, cool. Instead of me being an anxious person, suddenly when I'm asked to speak in public, I experience severe anxiety. That's very different than I am anxious, right? Suddenly you have something that can be worked on. So separating out your triggers and patterns from who you are can be really empowering for people. And then there's two other quick things for people who want to take it a level deeper. And they're like, okay, I can do that, but now what, right? Okay, now I have the patterns. Do we have time to share the two next steps?
Yeah. Can we do are you going to do the unsticky? I love the unsticky.
Oh, the unsticky one.
Too deep to go.
That's just a totally different direction. We could do that afterwards if there's time.
Go with where you want to go.
Okay. So let's say we have a pattern, like when I sit down to do my finances, I start to procrastinate and I go on social media. Let's say somebody has that pattern.
Me.
Cool. So there's 2 steps that you can take to start identifying the programs that are running in your subconscious mind that are keeping you stuck in that pattern. So once you have your pattern, the first thing you want to do is sit back, envision, and really imagine as fully and deeply as you can that you're experiencing that you're sitting down, that you're pulling out the paperwork, that you've got up on the screen your finances, and you imagine you're in it. And the second thing you do is, as you're imagining as deeply as you can, you notice the thoughts and the feelings that start to arise. Oh, my heart rate's starting to go up a little bit. I'm starting to think I'm not smart enough to do this. And you just bring intense awareness to the thoughts and the feelings that start to come up as you imagine being in this not so fun situation. Okay, so that's kind of the next step. The final step that will help you begin to uncover and shed some light on what's going on in your subconscious mind is asking yourself a simple question. What might I believe to be true to be experiencing those thoughts and emotions? So if I'm experiencing those kinds of thoughts and those kinds of emotions when I sit down to work on my finances, it might make sense if I believed I'm not capable, or I'm not competent, or I'm bad with numbers, I'm bad with math, I'm not capable of doing finances. If I make a mistake, I won't get another chance. And I might map out all the things that I might believe that would allow it to make sense for me to experience those thoughts and emotions with that
Or
pattern
this
that I
is
had
too
originally.
hard.
Hi, Sober on Purpose family. Please be sure and subscribe. We have a ton more videos. We have courses coming up. We have a newsletter that comes out weekly. Plus, there is a podcast as well. And for those who are brave enough to really decide they want to move into the future, they want to move into their future self and leave behind the hurts, habits, and hangups that they have struggled with over the last year, I work with extraordinary women who are ready to step in, open their hearts, and find the true self that they can share with their family, their community, and the world. Because it's only when one person changes that the whole world changes. Are you ready to jump into that kind of adventure? Click the links in the show notes and let me know. Let's talk and see if we're the right fit. Again, remember to subscribe, videos, courses, podcasts.